This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. 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 Boring.
You got it work. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
This is apologies. I understand there was some sound problem there. So let me reiterate for those of you who couldn't hear me before. I'm Lembit Öpik, and I'm talking about the steel industry today. I'm talking about my frustrations with the way that British manufacturing has been systematically ruined by successive governments. What you're seeing here is the Trident, Hawker Siddeley Trident, an aircraft which was in fact created, invented, designed and built in Britain with British steel. The frustration I have, and my appeal to you today, is to think about this in your own time. My frustration is that we hear warm words from ministers such as Chris Bryant MP saying they're going to support British steel. They're going to help 50% of all steel used in the United Kingdom's manufacturing industry be homegrown. But we couldn't produce something like the aircraft you see on the screen today. We are simply incapable of doing it. Successive governments, Labour and Conservative, have collectively ruined our manufacturing base. what you're seeing there is a design from half a century ago, a time when Britain really was able to make things and to make them fly and to sell them all over the world. We were selling these aircraft to China. I'll come back to China in a minute. I'll point out why this is somewhat ironic. We were able to lead the world because we knew how to make things, and we also knew how to power our manufacturing industry. That was with coal, with gas, and with oil. Now, let's come to the present day. We've got ministers who are saying they're going to try to help resuscitate the British steel industry. They're going to help our manufacturing industry. How? How can we do that whenever we have priced ourselves out of the market? Let me give you another example of one of the great creations of the 1960s. And I mentioned the 60s because that really was the halcyon time, I think, for British manufacturing, the 50s and 60s. You may have heard of a ship, the QE2, the second. This was launched in 1967, almost half a century ago, having been built in the British shipyard and launched by the British monarch. This ship was one of the finest designs ever created. It wasn't a cruise ship, it was an ocean liner, capable of surviving just about any weather. This QE2, the Queen Elizabeth II, was in fact also a ship to experience a 95-foot wave, a 30-meter wave, and get through it. This was Britain at its proud and ambitious best. This was Britain when we could actually make things, and more than anything, we could sell our wares and our reputation all over the world. The pride with which Britain created these things is writ large in the faces of the makers. And the pride with which the Queen launched this ship was really iconic of a better era. We had steel, we had ambition, we had a shipbuilding industry, we had an aviation industry, and we had a government that wasn't concerned about global warming. Now let's come to the present day. What you're looking at there simply couldn't happen anymore. Britain doesn't have the ambition to launch a ship like this or even build one. We've got hand-wringing politicians terrified of the idea that in some way, if we start doing things like building this, there's going to be some terrible catastrophe, that we're going to wreck the climate. Well, in actual fact, the reality is nothing of the sort. I'll come to some of the comments in a minute, but my proposition is that because we have worshipped at the false idol of climate emergency, none of this could happen today. A couple of thanks to Clamoy and also Wacky Dog. Yeah, I realized because of what you said that some of you weren't getting the sound. I think we recycled the system, so thanks for that. But I won't be silenced when it comes to warning us about the madness of our current administration. Let's look at one of the messages from Keir Starmer some years ago. Congratulations to the climate campaigners. There is no more important challenge than a climate emergency. That's why I voted against Heathrow expansion. He's proud, the Prime Minister today is proud of the fact that he opposed the expansion of Heathrow Airport. Now think about this. Britain has been trying to expand Heathrow Airport for maybe 20, 30 years, just an extra runway. In that time, China has either built or expanded 100 airports. That's right, 100 airports. And we couldn't even build a single extra runway for Heathrow or Gatwick. This is the lack of ambition with our current administration. There's somebody else who's responsible for this as well. And that's Ed Miliband. He's the energy minister. Here's a not very flattering photograph of him. He'll tell you there's a climate emergency. He'll tell you that carbon dioxide is our enemy. He'll tell you that somehow we have to decarbonize our entire industry. And he'll do it with a glee and a religious fervor, which pretty much shows his attempts to do this are fueled not by a scientific understanding of CO2, which is in fact the gas of life, but rather from this cultist assumption that it's good to stop the emission of CO2. But what's the consequence of this? And here's my main point. The consequence isn't that we've reduced our carbon dioxide emissions. It's that we've reduced our carbon dioxide emissions in this country. All we've really done is export our manufacturing primarily to China. Is China worried about CO2? No. Here's one of their power stations. They're happy to build more and more coal-fired power stations in order to power their industry, in order to make the things we used to make. So instead of buying the Trident 3 aircraft I showed you before, and China was a significant purchaser of that aircraft, we're buying everything from them. Now, CO2 doesn't stay in China just because it's made in China. Carbon dioxide just mixes freely in the entire atmosphere. Luckily, it's not an enemy of ours. It might give a slight warming effect, which is a small benefit, but by and large, it doesn't do much at all, and there's very little of it in the atmosphere in the first place. But what it means is they happily pump out gas, oil, and coal-fired emissions while making the things we used to make. Now, people like Chris Bryant, the MP, the minister who's proudly proclaiming he's going to try and help the steel industry, seem to ignore this fact. They seem to ignore the fact that even if you have coal and solar, you actually have to have something which will replace that power when there isn't any in the system. So fundamentally, my argument is this. Far from doing something which is clever, we've simply exported our carbon dioxide, we've exported our manufacturing, and worst of all, we've exported all the things that made Britain great. So I watch and listen to government ministers, and I watch the Prime Minister happily going on and on and on about how important it is for us to rebuild manufacturing. But what they're doing is the exact opposite. Keir Starmer claims to have some special relationship with the American president. I'm pretty sure we can all concede that's not really working out too well anymore. But while Trump has junked the climate nonsense, Starmer carries on peddling it together with his sidekick, Ed Miliband. I was incidentally slightly worried that Robert Jenrick, who used to be a Conservative but now has joined Reform UK, said live on a television interview this week, if you're watching it live, that there's every reason to cut carbon dioxide emissions. Why? I need to understand what Jenrick's talking about. Maybe he doesn't realize that Reform UK wants to junk net zero. I think he needs to kind of check the copybook there from his new party. But with the exception of Reform, which does show some signs of abandoning this climate madness, all the other parties are in collusion. The Lib Dems, the Greens, obviously, the Labour Party, and up to a point, the Conservatives, who were instrumental in putting this into law. Let's not forget it. The Tories are also culpable here. So here's my appeal. Here's my request. First to the politicians and then to you. To the politicians, look at the science. There is no reason to cut carbon dioxide. And if you do, and if that's your intention, don't pretend you can restore British steel, because you can't. It'll all be artificial. Putting tariffs on foreign steel to make it more expensive instead of taking tariffs off energy to make it cheaper is just about the stupidest energy policy I've ever heard. So don't do that. Just accept that carbon dioxide is our friend. It's the gas of life. It's what plants eat. And then the plants grow and we eat the plants and everything works fine. Stop the climate nonsense. Then there's a chance we might be able to recover some of our manufacturing industry. And to you, the voter, and you, the viewer, I have an even simpler appeal. Don't vote for anybody who's got this kind of attitude. Don't vote for anybody who's telling you that climate requires the reduction of carbon dioxide. It's at 0.04% of the atmosphere as it is. Did you know that? Instead, vote for people who say there is no climate emergency, but there is a manufacturing one. There is no CO2 demon sneaking about invisibly in the atmosphere, but there are political ignoramuses in Parliament hiking up the cost of energy and then turning out to be surprised when our manufacturing is ruined. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a time for cool heads, not hot environmental policies. This is a time to really reduce our energy policies, and the manufacturing will follow. I'll make one prediction. If we don't do that, whatever the subsidies and messing around and hand-wringing and fiddling about we do, as long as the curse of the fake climate crisis hangs like an albatross around the neck of British economics and manufacturing, we haven't got a hope of recovering anything like what we had before. So make a choice. When you meet a politician, ask them this question: do you believe there's a climate crisis? If they say yes, don't vote for them. If they say no, then ask how they will help to end this madness. Chris Bryant, I've known you for decades. Look at the science, my friend. And instead of making it more expensive to import steel, make it cheaper to have energy here. Apologies for the sound problem at the beginning. I think it is fixed now. Thank you for bearing with it. But thank you for paying attention to what I hope is the voice of common sense, and that is this station of ours, Unprecedented TV, which will tolerate people claiming there's a climate emergency, but will always challenge weak thinking where we see it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hopefully a very vocal station, Unprecedented TV. That's at Unprecedented TV on YouTube. And please continue the engagement with me on X as well. I welcome what you say. And thank you to those who pointed out the sound. Thanks to Wacky Dog and Clamoy. My team fixed it as soon as they saw your messages. So I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live here on Unprecedented TV. Have a good day. And as you breathe in, enjoy the wonder that is carbon dioxide.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.